here you can just fill up your, what's it called? Your drink, just unlimited. So I'm gonna give it a go. Get some Sprite, please.
Yeah, do you want any more ice in there?
No, thank you.
Can I grab more waffle?
Oh yeah, sure.
I don't think I've ever been to a restaurant where they're like, super tea.
This is one of the most American things I've experienced so far. You can get free unlimited refills at the water park for $20 a day. Every 15 minutes, you get a free Coke. Not water, Coke. I can't believe that. All you do is scan a QR code and they give you a Coca-Cola. I'm at a water park in Texas, which has a German name called Schlitterbahn, because apparently the Germans are the ones that started building the city, the town, and the water park started off as just 1 or 2 slides, and now it's miles long. You have to get a transit bus from one place to the other, but it's been great so far.
You want a refill? No, I'm good. I don't need it. I mean, it's free, so why not? Wait, it's free? Yeah. Why didn't you say so? What are you doing? I am getting my money's worth. But they were already free. Exactly. Oh my goodness.
What if the scam was that nobody was scamming you at all? Europeans arrive expecting hidden fees, finish one soda, and watch another appear for free. Then another. Why does something this ordinary feel almost suspiciously generous? Maybe the bigger shock isn't the refill itself, but realizing how many small American comforts never make it into the headlines. And once you get used to them, going home suddenly feels a lot less simple. Refill paradise. Some European visitors arrived in America expecting the bill to contain a surprise, and instead the surprise kept arriving in the same plastic cup. Free refills sound almost laughably small beside the giant spectacle of the 2026 World Cup. Yet this is exactly the kind of everyday American habit that can quietly rearrange someone's opinion of the country. Long before the trip, some European travelers had absorbed a familiar picture of the United States through headlines, social media clips, and political arguments. Everything costs more than expected, every convenience has a hidden charge, and somebody is always waiting to squeeze another dollar from you. Then they sit down at an American restaurant, finish a Coke, and another one appears without a second charge. That tiny moment can be wonderfully disorienting. In Germany, ordering another soft drink usually means ordering another soft drink and paying for it. In Italy, a bottle or can is generally sold as its own item. France goes even further in a different direction. Since 2017, unlimited self-service refills of sugary drinks have been restricted by law as part of public health policy. None of these systems are strange in their own setting, but they create a very different expectation. A European diner often thinks of a beverage as a measured purchase. In many American casual restaurants, the drink behaves more like Wi-Fi. Once you are in, nobody is counting every minute. That is where the charm begins. The American refill is not impressive because soda syrup is expensive. It is impressive because the customer does not have to think about it. The glass gets low, somebody notices, and suddenly it is full again while the conversation continues. No little calculation happens in your head about whether another drink is worth €4. No awkward debate begins over whether you are thirsty enough to justify ordering again. The entire system seems designed around one very American idea. If keeping the guest comfortable costs very little, why make them ask twice? There is something almost comically confident about that attitude. America looks at a 20-ounce cup and somehow decides the problem is that it might eventually become empty. Somewhere, a European visitor is still nursing the first bottle like it has to survive winter, while the American server is already approaching with enough iced tea to hydrate a Little League dugout. And this is where the stereotype starts losing its grip. The country visitors meet at street level can feel warmer, easier, and more generous than the version they had assembled from distant arguments. Free refills will not explain America, but they reveal something deeply American about hospitality. Abundance is often built into the experience without being announced as a grand gesture. After a few days, the suspicion usually disappears. The second refill stops looking like a billing error and starts feeling normal. Then comes the dangerous stage, when travelers return to a place where every Coke is charged separately and suddenly stare at the menu as if America has spoiled them permanently. A free refill costs very little. Getting used to one can be surprisingly expensive. Open all night. There is a particular kind of American freedom that Europeans often notice only after 10 p.m. when they realize the country has apparently decided that bedtime is a personal opinion rather than a commercial policy. For visitors coming from cities such as Munich, Vienna, or smaller towns across Germany and Austria, this can feel almost mischievous. In Germany, Sunday retail restrictions remain a normal part of life. with most shops generally closed except for specific exemptions such as stations, airports, bakeries, and certain convenience businesses. Britain is more flexible, but even England and Wales still restrict large stores on Sundays to 6 continuous hours of trading under the Sunday Trading Act. America, meanwhile, has spent decades perfecting an entirely different question. If somebody wants pancakes, cold medicine, gasoline, or a gallon of milk at 1:17 in the morning, why should the clock get involved? That attitude creates one of the easiest American habits to become attached to. A late-night diner does not feel revolutionary to someone who grew up with one down the road. Yet to a traveler accustomed to checking closing times before dinner is finished, it changes the rhythm of a trip. Miss the normal meal window, and the evening is not ruined. Arrive after a long flight, and there may still be somewhere brightly lit, serving burgers, eggs, coffee, or groceries. The United States has built enormous parts of daily life around the assumption that schedules are messy and people do not always become hungry at socially convenient hours. Waffle House is perhaps the funniest monument to that philosophy. The chain has more than 2,000 restaurants across the United States, concentrated heavily in the South, and its famous around-the-clock operating model has become so culturally recognizable that Americans joke about a closed Waffle House as if the weather must have personally declared war on civilization. FEMA officials have even referred to the informal Waffle House Index when discussing how quickly communities and businesses recover after severe storms, although it is not an official government metric. That is an astonishing amount of cultural meaning packed into eggs and hash browns. What makes this habit addictive is not simply that something remains open late, it is the removal of planning. In many European cities, everyday life rewards knowing the timetable, buy what you need before Sunday, check when the supermarket closes, remember that the kitchen may stop serving before the bar does. There is nothing wrong with that rhythm, and many Europeans value the quieter evenings it creates. America simply offers the opposite luxury. It says your day went sideways, your flight landed late, the kids are hungry, and somehow civilization can still produce a cheeseburger. Once travelers become used to that flexibility, American convenience starts feeling less like excess and more like a safety net, woven out of neon signs, coffee pots, and somebody working a griddle long after sensible people have gone home. Perhaps that explains why visitors can become strangely fond of a culture Americans barely notice themselves. The attraction is not really staying awake all night. It is knowing America still has your back when you do. America's mega pit stops. Somewhere on an American interstate, a gas station quietly stopped being a gas station and became the size of a small event venue, which is usually the moment European road trip logic begins to fall apart. Across much of Europe, fuel stops are built around efficiency. Pull into an Autobahn service area in Germany, a motorway station in Britain, or an autogrill in Italy, and the basic mission is familiar. Fuel the car, use the restroom, grab coffee, maybe buy a sandwich, then get moving again. America took that practical little routine, fed it barbecue, gave it several acres of parking, and somehow turned the pit stop into part of the vacation. Buc-ee's is the clearest example of just how far that idea can go. The chain's Luling, Texas location opened in 2024 at roughly 75,000 square feet, making it larger than many neighborhood supermarkets. Buc-ee's locations are also famous for enormous numbers of fuel pumps, walls of snacks, brisket counters, bakery sections, souvenirs, clothing, jerky, candy, and restrooms maintained with the kind of attention normally reserved for hotel lobbies. Calling one of these places a gas station feels technically correct in the same way calling an aircraft carrier a boat is technically correct. That scale says something interesting about American travel culture. The United States has about 4 million miles of public roads, according to Federal Highway Administration figures, and the interstate highway system alone stretches for more than 48,000 miles. In a country built around journeys that can consume half a day before you even cross a state line, roadside infrastructure evolved differently. A stop has to serve families, truckers, commuters, tourists, people towing boats, and someone who apparently decided that 11:30 p.m. was the perfect time to purchase 2 pounds of beef jerky and a decorative metal rooster. The result can be deeply addictive because America removes the feeling that stopping is wasted time. At a giant travel center, 20 minutes off the highway can become lunch, shopping, a restroom break, coffee, snacks for later, and a strange little cultural expedition through shelves of regional products. Children get out of the car without immediately asking when they have to get back in. Adults wander around long enough to forget they originally stopped because the fuel gauge was threatening them. That is a very different sensation from driving across densely connected European regions, where towns, cafes, rail stations, and services are often closer together. In countries such as the Netherlands or Belgium, crossing a significant portion of the country can take less time than driving across metropolitan Houston during bad traffic. American distances encourage roadside businesses to become destinations because there may be another 100 miles of highway waiting afterward. And this is where outsiders often discover something the stereotypes miss. American excess can look ridiculous from across the Atlantic, right up until that excess gives you spotless restrooms, hot barbecue, 30 kinds of snacks, enormous parking spaces, fresh coffee, and enough fuel pumps that nobody has to duel for one, like it is the final parking spot at Costco on Christmas Eve. Suddenly too much begins feeling suspiciously convenient. That may be one of America's most charming tricks. It takes something nobody expects to remember, like stopping for gas, and somehow gives it enough personality that travelers start taking pictures. Box it up, one of the most American sentences in a restaurant, may also be one of the simplest. Can I get a box? To many Americans, there is nothing remarkable about it. Dinner was good, the portion was generous, half the fries survived, and tomorrow's lunch has just been quietly handled. Yet for travelers from parts of Europe, the casual confidence of taking restaurant leftovers home can feel surprisingly different from what they grew up with. France is a perfect example of how much attitudes have changed. Since July 2001, French restaurants have generally been required to provide customers with a container for unfinished food when requested, with certain exceptions. The law was introduced as part of a broader effort to reduce food waste. The fact that legislation was needed at all tells you something interesting. Taking leftovers home had never been as deeply woven into French restaurant culture as it has been in the United States. In America, nobody needs to hold a committee meeting over 3 remaining mozzarella sticks. They go in the box. That habit becomes especially charming once visitors realize what it does to the economics of eating out. A large restaurant portion is no longer simply a giant meal that must be conquered before the check arrives. It can become dinner tonight and lunch tomorrow, which makes American abundance feel far more practical than it first appears. That steak does not need a heroic final battle. Those pancakes do not need to be finished like somebody is competing at the county fair. America gives you permission to surrender gracefully and take the survivors home. There is also a wonderfully unpretentious quality to the whole ritual. The leftovers are not treated like an embarrassing admission that you ordered too much. Servers routinely offer containers, families stack them beside the check, and nobody at the next table cares. In some restaurants, the box arrives so naturally that it feels like the final course. That matters in a country where food waste is a serious problem. The U.S. Department of Agriculture has long estimated that roughly 30 to 40% of the American food supply is lost or wasted. Taking restaurant leftovers home obviously cannot solve that enormous issue by itself, but the cultural instinct behind the doggy bag is refreshingly practical. Good food that has already been prepared should not automatically become trash just because dinner is technically over. The contrast can be especially noticeable to someone used to dining in Paris, Rome, or Madrid, where portions are often smaller, and restaurant meals have traditionally been structured around finishing what is served at the table. American restaurants frequently offer larger plates, so the take-home box becomes part of the ecosystem rather than an afterthought. And this may be why the habit becomes addictive so quickly. By the 3rd or 4th American restaurant, that little cardboard container stops looking cheap or awkward and starts looking like a bonus round. You paid for the meal, you enjoyed it, and America is perfectly happy to let tomorrow enjoy it too. Bathroom freedom. There is a wonderfully American moment that rarely makes travel brochures. You walk into a gas station, supermarket, fast food restaurant, or highway rest area. Ask where the restroom is, and nobody points toward a turnstile asking for coins. For travelers used to parts of Germany, Austria, or the Netherlands, that tiny detail can feel strangely luxurious. At many German motorway service areas, paid restroom systems such as Santa Fe commonly charge around €1, often returning part of that value as a voucher for purchases. Major European railway stations have also traditionally used paid facilities. The logic is perfectly understandable because those fees help cover cleaning and maintenance. Yet the habit teaches people to keep spare change nearby whenever nature starts filing an urgent complaint. America usually handles the same problem with far less ceremony. Walk into a Buc-ee's, a Walmart, a Target, a highway welcome center, or countless roadside restaurants, and the restroom is generally treated as part of the building rather than a separate transaction. Nobody expects applause for this because Americans have lived with it so long that free bathroom access feels almost as ordinary as automatic doors. For a visitor who has spent years mentally budgeting €1 every time a train journey becomes inconvenient. However, that little blue restroom sign can look surprisingly close to a national monument. The difference says something revealing about how American businesses think about convenience. A clean restroom does not directly sell a hamburger, groceries, gasoline, or a hotel room, yet it makes the entire stop easier. Families stay longer, road trippers are more comfortable, and customers leave with a better memory of the place. Buc-ee's understood this so well that its famously clean restrooms became part of the brand itself. The chain has repeatedly won national attention for restroom cleanliness. Turning a necessity, most companies hide in the back hallway into something customers actually talk about. That sounds ridiculous until you spend 6 hours on an interstate with 2 children and a large coffee. Then restroom quality becomes constitutional law. The American interstate rest area system pushes the idea even further. States maintain hundreds of rest areas and welcome centers where drivers can stop, stretch, use facilities, check maps, and continue their journeys without buying anything at all. That is a very American form of practical generosity, because the traveler does not have to prove they are a customer before receiving something basic. Europe certainly has excellent public facilities of its own. Paris, for example, operates hundreds of free, self-cleaning street toilets, while many Scandinavian cities provide well-maintained public conveniences. The contrast is therefore not about one continent caring and another refusing to care. It is about where the convenience appears and how routinely travelers expect to encounter it. After enough time in America, that expectation becomes dangerously comfortable. You stop carrying coins for emergencies, stop scanning for price signs, and simply assume that a restroom will be available somewhere nearby. Then you return to a European train station, see a payment gate, and suddenly one American habit you never thought worth mentioning feels like a tiny piece of freedom you forgot to pack. Medicine through a window. There is a moment in America that can make a European traveler wonder whether the country secretly hired a fast food engineer to redesign healthcare convenience. You can pick up prescription medicine without even leaving. The car. The drive-through pharmacy is one of those inventions Americans barely discuss because it has become ordinary, yet from Madrid, Berlin, Vienna, or Paris, the idea still feels wonderfully unusual. In much of Europe, pharmacies remain places you physically enter, speak to a pharmacist, collect the medication, and walk back out carrying a small paper bag. Germany alone has roughly 17,000 community pharmacies, and the traditional apotheke remains a very visible part of neighborhood life. France has more than 20,000 pharmacies and one of Europe's densest pharmacy networks, so nobody could reasonably argue that Europeans lack access. America simply looked at the same errand and asked a very American question. Could this be done without finding a parking space? That change sounds almost comically minor until someone is sick, traveling with a sleeping child, recovering from surgery, dealing with limited mobility, or sitting inside a car during a freezing Midwestern evening. At that point, saving 5 minutes and 20 unnecessary steps suddenly feels less like laziness and more like somebody designed the system after actually meeting a tired human being. Large American chains help make that convenience familiar nationwide. CVS Health operates roughly 9,000 retail locations, while Walgreens has thousands of stores across the country, and drive-through prescription pickup has become a recognizable feature at many suburban pharmacies. The window usually looks almost disappointingly ordinary. Pull up, confirm the prescription, handle payment or insurance details, receive the medication, and drive away. There is no cinematic machinery involved, although the little sliding drawer occasionally gives the experience the energy of a bank transaction where the valuable asset happens to be antibiotics. The cultural difference becomes interesting because Europeans often associate American car culture with excess, sprawling suburbs, giant parking lots, people driving distances that might be walked elsewhere. Those criticisms are understandable, yet the drive-through pharmacy reveals the other side of that same system. Once a society is organized around cars, convenience starts being engineered around the moments when getting out of one is genuinely difficult. America has always been unusually good at turning inconvenience into a design problem. That instinct is part of why the service becomes so easy to love. It does not require admiration for cars, suburbs, or chain stores. It simply offers the pleasant realization that one irritating task has disappeared from the day. Nobody has to circle a parking lot, carry a sick child through automatic doors, stand under fluorescent lights, then repeat the entire journey in reverse. To someone accustomed to pharmacies tucked into the streets of central Paris or neighborhood apotheken in Munich, the American version can initially look almost absurd, like ordering cough medicine with the same choreography used to collect fries. Then flu season arrives. Suddenly that little window starts looking less like an American gimmick and more like one of those ideas Europe forgot to steal. Sample heaven, a European visitor can walk into an American warehouse store intending to buy paper towels and somehow leave 40 minutes later having sampled chicken teriyaki, cheese, granola, sausage, sparkling water, and a dessert they had never heard of 5 minutes earlier. No reservation, no tasting menu, and nobody appears with a tiny bill afterward. That strange little ritual is one of America's most charming retail habits, the free sample. Costco has turned it into something close to Saturday entertainment. According to Costco's 2024 annual report, the company operated 614 warehouses in the United States and Puerto Rico, compared with 29 in the United Kingdom, 5 in Spain, and 2 in France. Warehouse clubs certainly exist in Europe, but the American scale makes the experience feel culturally different. In many US suburbs, a Costco run is not merely shopping. It can become lunch, product discovery, family logistics, and mild competitive sport involving a shopping cart the size of a studio apartment. The genius of the sample is psychological rather than nutritional. A supermarket shelf normally asks customers to take a risk, buy the whole package first, and discover whether you like it later. American sampling reverses that order. Taste first, decide afterward. That tiny change removes friction from shopping, especially when a product is unfamiliar. A tray holding quarter-sized pieces of smoked sausage suddenly becomes a diplomatic mission between customer and brand. The humor begins when shoppers pretend this is purely educational. Nobody needs 6 separate research samples to understand mozzarella sticks. Yet somehow the route through the warehouse develops the strategic complexity of an NFL playbook. One family member studies frozen foods while another casually circles back toward the dumplings, hoping the employee has forgotten their face. The employee absolutely remembers. America simply chooses kindness. Compared with grocery culture in Paris, Rome, or central Berlin, the difference is striking. European supermarkets often emphasize efficient, everyday purchasing, while traditional markets put freshness and personal interaction at the center. America's warehouse model celebrates discovery through abundance. Shelves rise overhead, packages look capable of surviving a minor apocalypse, and samples turn that enormous space into something playful rather than intimidating. That playfulness matters because shopping normally feels like an obligation. Free samples quietly change the mood. Customers slow down, talk about flavors, try something unfamiliar, and occasionally buy a product they would have ignored 10 seconds earlier. It is retail behaving less like a transaction and more like a neighborhood cookout where someone keeps saying, "Try this." There is also something deeply American about giving away a little in order to create a better experience. The sample costs almost nothing compared with the full basket, yet it makes the customer feel welcomed rather than processed. Nobody promises luxury. Nobody needs velvet ropes. Someone simply hands you a warm bite of food on a toothpick while you stand beside 60 rolls of toilet paper. That combination should not feel special. Somehow, in America, it absolutely does. And once visitors discover that Saturday shopping can come with free snacks, returning to a silent supermarket aisle suddenly feels a little too serious. Sometimes America wins people over in the smallest ways. A free refill, a clean restroom, a late-night diner, or a sample handed across a Costco aisle. None of these belonged on a postcard, yet together they reveal a country built around comfort, generosity, and everyday convenience. Maybe that is why some visitors arrive expecting one America and leave missing another. What American habit would you miss most overseas? Tell us below, and subscribe for more stories that make everyday America worth rediscovering.